Welcome to this week's edition of Black Authors Matter TV, where we interview the latest movers and shakers in the African American literary community. You'll meet some old friends, discover new ones, and stay abreast of the latest book developments around the country and even the world. So sit back and relax for the next 2 hours with Black Authors Matter TV co-hosts Wein Richardson and Dr. Rhonda Lawson.
And we have our first guest we're bringing on. So our first guest is Joshunda Sanders. And this is a very interesting subject because she has a book called Women of the Post. And I wanted to ask her some questions about, it seems like this topic has become a topic of interest in recent years. And I wanted to know if she had any ideas why. So anyway, Joshunda, welcome to Black Authors Matter TV. And we apologize, we had a little technical difficulty at the very beginning.
Oh, no, that's all right. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Okay.
And thank you for being here.
And do you have a copy of your book, Women of the Post?
Not next to me, no. Do you have it? But I can go get it.
Okay.
We want to see the cover. Is it close to you?
It's close to me. I'll go get it. I'll be right back.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, because we would like to see the cover. And let me see. I'm trying to see.
That was quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, I told you it was close.
It was. Okay, Women of the Post. And
it's that's an interesting cover. It looks like is it kind of juxtaposed onto something else? Your virtual background is playing with it. Oh, that's much better.
Yeah. Is this
no, it's not. It's set in a male, like in a hangar, like an airplane hangar, and so you can see where I think this backdrop is supposed to be the 17 million plus pieces of mail that the 855 Black women of the Postal Battalion helped to clear for the troops who marched on Normandy.
Right. And this is a topic, and I'm sure you're familiar with Sisters in Arms by Kaya Alderson that came out. I think it's Kai. I think it's her name. That came out, I guess maybe a year and a half ago or a couple of years ago. And now Tyler Perry has a Netflix movie about the topic that's going to be, I'm not sure of the release date, it's supposed to be this year, called the 6888, which is also about the Postal Battalion. So I wondered, it's like all of a sudden we're hearing about this from World War II. Maybe it was being talked about some other time and I just didn't hear about it. But I consider myself to be a student of history, and I pay close attention to things.
We're starting to hear more about the women who contributed to World War II, but I think this is the first time I've seen a study on the Black women who participated in World War II. And who set the basically, as you said, set the stage for the Battle of Normandy. So I'm very interested in that topic myself. Being a Black female veteran myself, this is something that's very close to my heart.
What branch did you serve in?
I was in the U.S. Army for 23 years.
Oh my gosh! Well, thank you for your service. That's incredible. I love to say that specifically to Black women veterans, because I feel like no one says that to them. That's what I have heard. But I can say that I did not think that I would be writing about World War II because I have not traditionally been interested in historical fiction. So my interest in the battalion really came about because I have written a novel that was, I lived in Texas for many years, and I have written a novel that that featured this woman who woke me up out of my sleep I had like a family illness going on. And my mom had terminal cervical cancer. And so I was awake at like 3 a.m. and I had this vision of this woman in men's clothing sitting at a kitchen table, and she was going to go somewhere. And this was maybe back in 2011. And so I had no idea what she was doing or what she was trying to tell me or what her situation was. But that was, I think, and I've heard that other writers have similar situations where they're just a character is inspired by a dream or some vision that they have, or, it's like a visitation. And so I tried to follow that novel where it went, but it didn't really go in the direction that I expected it to. And I just had family events take over my life. And so I put that novel away. And when at the beginning of 2017, as Trump took his presidency, and as I went to Hedgebrook, which is a women's writers residency on the West Coast, and finally I had some respite. I was able to like breathe and think and write. And so I was doing that. And I had that novel in the back of my mind and that woman and where she was going. And then I happened to read an obituary for a woman named Alice Dixon. And Alice Dixon was 106. She had served in the Women's Army Corps, and she had served in the 688. And that was the first time I heard about the 688 or the Women's Army Corps. And so I just went down this rabbit hole, and then I thought, oh, this is where that woman goes. And her name was Judy back in 2011. And so I carried that over into writing this new book. I ordered a bunch of books, including One Woman's Army by Charity Adams, who is the highest ranking Black woman in the Army, who led the 688 battalion. And then I started writing basically what would become the Women of the Post back then. So that's how my interest started. And I think it's a wonderful coincidence. First of all, there are 20 million or so. This is a rough estimate. There are many, many books about World War II. Most of them feature white men. So I think it's fantastic that there are multiple iterations of the story of the 688. And I think we need more. In fact, I think there are more. There's a children's book coming out. I think Blair Underwood was producing a musical about the 688. So it's great that there is more than one version of the story. And I think that there should just be more of it, because there are all kinds of different ways that the inner lives and the intimate experiences of Black women who serve in the military are not covered at all in history. We don't know what it's like. We can talk about, okay, yes, they served and they were marginalized and all this, but like, where did they get their hair done? In Birmingham, England in 1944? Like, that's what I want to know, right? Like, and they did, so there's a scene in the book where they're actually building what they need, which is what Black women do, right? So like that, like we need all due respect to Tyler Perry, he's not going to write that scene, because he doesn't really know that struggle, but I do. And like, and so we need these multiple versions of the story because they deserve that, just like all the 20 million other versions of World War II that don't center us deserve to be told.
Yeah, I think it's wonderful. It just seemed like, and it's things happen at the time they're supposed to. Yes. But it just seemed like all of a sudden we're hearing about this, which is great, because it's all of a sudden we're hearing about a lot of things that we didn't hear about before. And it's true because more people are writing and more people are getting published by major publishers, but more people are also self-publishing really good work. So it's we have an abundance of riches in many ways, which is really great. So, and it's interesting to hear how coming
out. It's also good that it's coming out at a time where historical fiction has basically had a boom.
Right.
So the audience is a lot more receptive to this story.
Yes. No, that's absolutely true. And I mean, I think, from my perspective, I grew up in the Bronx in the 80s and 90s. And so there's a piece in my book about the Bronx slave market. So basically the main character, Judy Washington, goes from the Bronx slave market to the Women's Army Corps. But the reason I brought up the Bronx slave market, which was uncovered originally by Ella Baker and a Black woman journalist named Marvell Cook, who went undercover on the Bronx slave market, which was basically an open air domestic worker situation that was in different parts of the Bronx, where white women would basically go to pick up Black women and get them to do basically the hardest manual labor that they could imagine, cleaning windows and washing laundry by hand in cold water and all this. And they would pay them, you know, basically pennies an hour to do this manual grueling labor. And part of it was because the secretary of state at the time, Henry Stimson, had basically outlawed European immigrants, right, who were the preferred domestic workers of the white middle class, from coming over during World War II. So that meant that there was this dearth of domestic workers. And so, of course, they looked to poor Black women who they thought, PS, were too dirty to live in their houses, but they didn't think they were too dirty to clean their houses for pennies. And so Marvel Cook and Ella Baker were the ones who basically elevated in the crisis, and later I think the Amsterdam News, the story of the Bronx slave market, which was important for me to tell because, you know, there's this idea and this narrative in this country that there was no slavery in the North, that the South is to blame all racism,
for everything, for all the
everywhere.
racism, right?
Right, but it's like, well, we know that New York is one of the most segregated places in the country, and you know, the Bronx is the epicenter of poverty, still, even as it gentrifies. And so I felt like it was important to also point out that for so many of us, we have no employment opportunities. We have no job mobility. That was true in the 40s. It's true today. And so the wealth gap in this country, you can stem back to World War II in part because even after the war and after these women served, many of them didn't get GI Bill benefits. They were part of millions of Black veterans, men and women, who just didn't get what they deserved. And so that's also an important piece, I think, to lift up.
Okay. Yeah, it was interesting to see how you came across the what motivated you, this 106-year-old woman that you read about. So, well, you know,
yeah, she had changed her name. She decided when she was young that she was gonna spell Alice with a Y.
I thought I had caught on to you saying that she had changed her name.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, she changed her name. And so, you know, there's a character in the book named Mary Alice, who is basically my imagined version of a recruit that Charity Adams writes about, who grew up in Vermont and spent her whole life around white people and thought she was white until she went to the Army Corps. And then she realized that her birth certificate said that her father was Black. And so I thought it was important to name Mary Alice after Alice Dixon, one, in tribute to Alice Dixon, who was the main inspiration for the story, but also because of her trajectory, you know, where she goes from basically changing everything in her life changes as soon as she goes to the Army, including her identity. And what an incredible journey to have to go on when you think that you're one thing, especially if you're a white woman, and then it turns out that you have to serve with Black women in the Army.
Yeah. Well, for those who may not,
go ahead, Dwayne.
Well, I was going to ask her to do an encapsulation for those who may not know what
about the book,
the 688 battalion, that part.
Yeah, the 6888. Okay, right. So the 6888 was the only self-contained unit of Black women and I think Black people to serve in World War II. At the time, Black people were not allowed to serve overseas, and so it was basically necessity, and the fact that so many people had died that they sort of ran out of people, so they were like, we need a support unit. The prisoners of war were gone, like everything was like just completely a wreck, which is usually what it is when they call us to help out. And so that was the situation in 1944. Mary McLeod Bethune, along with the Black press, were instrumental in helping to get the battalion to Birmingham, England, which is where they first went. They sailed on a ship called the Ile-de-France, which I think Eartha Kitt was maybe the only other Black person who had ever sailed on that ship, but they changed it into a military ship. and the women went overseas under Charity Adams' command. And they had 6 months, I think, to clear this backlog of millions of pieces of mail. Their motto was no mail, no morale, because essentially the troops who were still serving and marching on Normandy and dealing with the Battle of the Bulge and all over Europe and later into Asia, parts of the Philippines, like all of those people thought that the war was going to be over in 1944. But Hitler and others had other plans. And so they continued to try and keep morale up. And because the soldiers in the trenches were cut off from mail, they had no news about what was going back home, and it's put them psychologically in danger. And so the work that these women did to clear this backlog and to connect these soldiers with their loved ones was critical to winning the war effort, because it meant that people who hadn't had any connection at all to the world, possibly for years, now suddenly could hear from people that they loved, and to be inspired to get themselves back home.
Beautiful.
Rhonda, I
Beautiful
will
summation.
pivot to you for the last couple of questions.
Well, my question, even with all of the everything that you learned about the history of the 6888, why did you choose to do a historical fiction novel instead of a nonfiction?
Yeah, I love that question, because I was a journalist and I do love history and I love the facts of history, and I think that could have been fascinating. I think one, in terms of time and just the practical nature of trying to track down surviving members of the 6888, which I would want to do if I were going to do nonfiction. And then also just the gaps, I think, in the archive about what I was mentioning earlier in terms of their inner lives, in terms of the sisterhood, in terms of their relationships to each other, but also their relationships with other people overseas. It felt to me, writers often talk about how fiction can be more real than real life. And for me, the most important part of the 6888 and their journey, and specifically the main characters in the book, is their inner lives, is the fact that they defied all of these expectations of their time. Women weren't supposed to work, and they were mistreated and maligned in the press for trying to be men, distracting the soldiers over there with their womanly ways and all of this other nonsense. And so it felt important for me to not root a narrative in the adversities that they faced, but rather the fact that they found sisterhood and they managed to persevere, and not only persevere, but to be true patriots in their service to this country, and to illuminate that through their sisterhood, as opposed to sort of relying on actual documents and records. I felt like I had to imagine a lot of how they would kiki and hang out and maybe drink a little moonshine and all that.
You give a little human element.
That's not in the archive, but we know that probably happened. That's probably yeah.
Yeah, sometimes history has a habit of making it seem like everything that we did was kind of almost robotic. Like, for instance, when we think of Martin Luther King Jr., for example, we think that he was always preaching. He was always marching. We don't think about that he was probably tired. That we don't think about the times he said, that mother effer has one more time. We don't think about him saying all of those things.
Yeah, it's dehumanizing. It's another way. It's a very subtle and nuanced way of dehumanizing us, to make us symbols that do not have a full range of human expression. And that's what I wanted for my characters. And I had to imagine it, because as you mentioned, if you look at any of our historical figures, there's nothing about when they were raggedy and when they were petty. And sometimes they were raggedy and sometimes they were petty. And they are allowed that. You know what I mean? And Yes, I feel that's what our ancestors want for us, to know that like you can be brilliant and trailblazing and pioneering and also have these human aspects to you, because that's what it is to be human.
Right,
Absolutely.
right. But to be a multidimensional person, like all people, and not
Yes.
just one dimensional, you know.
Right, and it shouldn't be a luxury. And also I think that that does real damage to us actually in terms of representation, because we don't let young people know, and the generations coming after us know, like you can be imperfect. Like that's actually what it is. Like that's real, you know? And so this pressure to perform and have a persona and to seem perfect is, you know, I think it can be actually pretty debilitating, you know, because then how do you grow as a person, and how do you know when you're really petty? You know, like you wouldn't know that, you know, because you've never seen it. You don't know what it looks like in action. But it's like, listen, I have some aunties and show you how to do it. You know, if you don't,
Absolutely,
forgot,
absolutely. Now,
you
your book,
know.
you published your book in July of 2023. So you just experienced your first Black History Month with this book. How has the reception been?
It's really been really wonderful. It's, you know, I haven't, this is my first interview. Well, this is my second conversation about the book, during Black History Month. And I'll have a couple more conversations throughout the rest of the year, which actually is a great relief, honestly, because it is American history. It is Black history for sure, 100%, but it's also women's history. It's also about Juneteenth. It's also about, you know, like it is also about Veterans Day, you know, like it, my aspiration for us and our Black history stories, especially in this short month, even though it's a leap year, yay.
We get an extra day.
Yeah, we get one extra day. It's still 1 day short, 2 days short, but it's all good. But like what I love though is pulling the story from the margins, and pulling our stories of all kinds from the margins and bringing them to the center, you know, and like don't like, yes, Black history 100%. I'm all about that, of course. But I also love that I'll just continue talking about them all year long and
Absolutely.
finding people.
Absolutely. I
It,
mean,
Well,
you
Black
it,
did
it's
history is
History Month,
American history for sure.
yes.
100%,
Mhm.
But it's
100%.
but as you said, it's
It's
also
been really
Women's
wonderful.
History. In August, you have Women's Equality Day. There are so many opportunities for this book. And let's not even talk about Veterans Day.
Yes,
Let's talk about
yes,
Memorial Day.
Memorial Day. Mhm.
yes, yes. No, but it's been wonderful. I actually heard from some relatives of Alice Dixon who said that they think that she would have been pleased at the representation of her in the book,
That's
and
my honor.
and what high praise, you know, like that is why I do what I do, you know, is to actually hope that I could even slightly get in the arena of what people actually experienced and what Black women actually experienced in the 40s, because this is before desegregation, you know, this is before the
Right.
army, the military was truly
Mhm.
desegregated. And
Mhm.
so, you know, to think that I had any part in elevating those experiences is actually just, it's such an honor.
Wonderful. Well, unfortunately, we've come to the end of the interview, but that was a great way to end it. Those were great final words. If you can remind us, show us the book one more time and where we can find it.
Yes, this is Women of the Post. It is available on Amazon, Bookshop, everywhere that books are sold. And I would love it if you would pick up a copy.
Well, I certainly will.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. And happy Black
Okay.
History.
And the same
Okay.
to
Same
you.
to you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay. So,
Almost
Rhonda,
ended I almost ended the stream.
oh, please don't do that since we already have.
Right.
So, tell us about your literary weekend last weekend. Just give us a encapsulated version of how it went
Yes.
and everything. I
I would
saw your
say,
posts and everything.
yes, I would say it was beautiful. With this year was our biggest one. We had 10 authors. Normally we have 8 authors. This year we had 10. And we had 2 winners of the essay contest, one 8th grader and one 9th grader. And their parents applauded when I gave them a copy of the book.
Oh, well, great.
Yes.
And I saw they were both males.
Yes, this was the first time I've had both of the winners be boys, and I think a lot of people were excited about that. Because we don't always get to see our young Black boys in such a positive light. So being able to do that was just amazing. One funny thing is we went to, we always do a school visit, and so I sent my children's authors off to a preschool, and the rest of the authors went to a high school, and had a great time there. One young man stood up and asked a really great question about writing, and then later on, one of the teachers said, he never speaks. You guys got him to open up and talk, and he stood up and asked this question, and they were so excited about that. And then at the last minute, we got invited to a middle school, and the kids there, even though they were younger, they were very engaged. And so it just wound up being a very beautiful weekend all around. Lots of prizes given out, lots of connections made, and that's what this event is all about. I tell people, you're going to sell your books, but this is all about making connections with each other, impacting our youth, and then making connections out in the community. And they were able to do all 3 of those. So I'm super happy. If you haven't seen the Meet the World Image Solutions Instagram page or the Facebook pages, go to the pages, take a look at some of the scenes from the different events that we had all throughout the weekend, and there are more photos to come. We have so many. It's just like what you said with the National Black Book Festival. I probably have enough content for a month. So
it took me 3 months to post all the pictures.
Yes.
So before we bring on our next guest, are they there?
Yes.
Okay. I wanted to we have a new line of t-shirts, and we have 5 new ones. So you all are familiar with the Black Authors Matter t-shirts, and I've worn a couple of the other ones. Well, tonight I'm wearing the Harlem Renaissance t-shirt, and I'm going to stand up so people can see a little bit of it. It has a little really splashy words, and it has a list of names. You can't see all the names, but the first name is Zora Neale Hurston, and then W.E.B. Du Bois, and it has 8 of the Harlem Renaissance authors on it. So if you're interested in looking at our new line of literary themed t-shirts, you can find them at cushcity.com or the National Black Book Festival's website. On Cush City, we have them all in an array. So all 6 shirts right there on the homepage. So, and that's cushcity.com. So anyway, congratulations, Rhonda, on your event. And I'm planning to be there next year. It's just I couldn't get there this year, but I'm glad I was able to donate the books.
No, really, thank you for donating the books each year. They are well received by the families who we give them to. So thank you once again. And next year is going to be awesome. And there's going to be a special announcement posted to the Instagram page tomorrow about the next 2 years, about the time and place for 25 and 26.
Okay. Well, good planning ahead. That's great.
All right. So we ready to bring on our next guest?
Yeah.
All right. So we have Sherri Smith and Elizabeth Gatlin. There we go.
Believe it or not, I'm still getting over this sinus infection.
Don't feel bad because my eye keeps watering. I don't want y'all thinking I'm crying. I mean, I love the interviews, but I'm I'm not crying.
I brought you to tears. So anyway, this is an aside. So our next 2 guests are co-authors of a book called American Wings, and we are still dealing with history and the military. So our first guest was military women, and this one is both aviators, and it's for Chicago aviators from World War II as well. So
Awesome.
welcome Sherri and Elizabeth to Black Authors Matter TV.
And you can go ahead and unmute. Unless you're in the same place and you're going to have feedback.
No, and Elizabeth is joining us from London. Is that right? Or
Scotland.
Scotland. Okay. So welcome. What time is it there?
You don't want to know. It's 1:30.
Oh, okay.
Thank you for staying up all hours of the night.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much.
So how did you two come together to create this
what I
book?
was
I mean, you're in
gonna
totally different parts. Huh? Did I take your question, Gwen?
No, yeah, I mean, yeah, we do that often. But yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna ask.
So we knew about each other. We kind of both write the same thing. We write in the same genre. We don't write exactly the same thing, but we both write about young people flying, and we both write about World War II. And I got sent one of Sherri's books, her book, The Blossom and the Firefly, to write an endorsement for her, a blurb for her on the back.
Okay.
And I had just finished writing nonfiction book about women pilots in World War II. And I was thinking about the subject of this book. And I thought it will be so much easier if I have somebody to work with me. And I could tell from what I was reading of Sherri's book, and I knew her other work as well. And she'd written about the Tuskegee Airmen. She'd written Fly Girl, and I knew she could do research. And I thought, aha, okay, maybe she would like to join me on this project. And from Sherri's point of view, it was a little bit different.
Was definitely different from my point of view. So I wrote a book called Fly Girl, and when it came out, it's about a light-skinned Black girl who joins the Women's Air Force Service Pilots in World War II. And when it came out, every single person said, "Oh my God, have you read Codename Verity by Elizabeth Wein?" And they all talked about how great Elizabeth's book was. And so I had a little bit of a chip on my shoulder, I have to say, about it. And then when my editor was like, "Oh, we're gonna, Elizabeth Wein says she'll give you a blurb for The Blossom and the Firefly, but she wants to talk to you." I was like taking off my earrings. I'm like, okay, I'm finally gonna have it out with Elizabeth. And instead, she was like, "Do you
It's gonna be a fight to the death."
Totally, that's what I thought. And she's like, "Do you want to do a team up?" Because in Fly Girl, the main character wants to go to a flying school in Chicago run by Cornelius Coffey. And in my Tuskegee Airmen book, which is a nonfiction book, Who Were the Tuskegee Airmen, there's an aside about Coffey because he ran the flying school that ended up training a lot of the people who went on to train the Tuskegee Airmen. And Elizabeth had touched on similar history and was inspired by one of our book, American Wings, follows four people, John C. Robinson, Cornelius Coffey, Janet Harmon Bragg, and Willa Brown. And Elizabeth had touched on John Robinson's legacy. And so it suddenly just seemed like, and of course, you don't need, there's no knife fight in the back alley of book world here. This is like the perfect team up instead. And I gotta say, I'm delighted that she thought to ask.
Well, I was delighted that Sherri accepted. And really from the start, it was a collaboration because we had this idea. I said, "Would you like to do this?" And we then had to come up with a pitch together. Sherri wrote the chapter outline that we sent out to different editors. It was, right from the very beginning, before we'd even written anything or done any of the research, we were both working on it.
It was really
So
exciting.
what's it like to be able to write together? I mean, I don't know if you have different writing styles or if you wrote a different, okay, you're nodding your head.
We have different writing styles. And so that was actually, it could have been, it was a comedy, it could have been a tragedy, but I am what you call a plotter, and Elizabeth is a pantser. So she flies by the seat of her pants and she just gets into the story and goes, whereas I do outlines and I plan and I think. And so we had approached the research by dividing the subjects, and I took Janet Harmon Bragg and Cornelius Coffey, and Elizabeth took John C. Robinson and Willa Brown. And we went off into our corners and did all this research in the middle of a pandemic, which made it very difficult to get access. And then we came back and tried to compile what we had. And I kept thinking Elizabeth is working so hard and doing such a great job, and I am just a lazy slob who can't get it together, because I'm not used to working with a partner, and it's like showing somebody your house before you've cleaned it for the party. You know, I was like, I don't want her to see my early drafts, but it turned out
I was thinking exactly the same thing. She didn't know it, but I was thinking exactly the same thing.
So we finally came
because you're
together.
a pantser and she's more of a planner, you probably thought that you were ruining her flow, and you as a planner thought you were ruining her flow.
No. I did not think she was ruining anything. We both had the impression that the other one was just like really, really into this and working much harder. And Sherri, I mean, I've completely forgotten about this, but what was your story about my reaction to your chapter outline?
Oh, so
Or no, to your timeline.
Yeah, I made this timeline, and I did turn it into a chapter outline, but I call it my murder wall because it was like the police have the big board up with all the suspects in a crime. I had this giant timeline that I taped up in my office, and my husband came in. He's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm writing a book. Leave me alone." But I finally shared it with Elizabeth, and I thought she was going to think I was cuckoo, and she was like, "This is amazing. Thank God you've done this."
It's like, God, I have no idea what the time was, what the order was, because the way
it all fits together.
The way I work, I sort of like I amass the stuff and then I just kind of like plow through it, and it falls into place in my head and in my writing as I'm going. But Sherri likes to line everything up ahead of time and work through it. And actually, our two different writing styles really kind of helped each other out, I think. I don't think we realized this until we finally both got together and like in person, and we're able to meet each other and talk to each other, because we'd had Zoom calls and we knew about each other. We sent masses of emails, but we hadn't actually met in person.
Oh, okay. So you all's writing styles complemented each other.
I think so. Yeah. And I think when you read the book, we know pretty much who wrote what or who started the ball rolling, but I don't think that you can really tell as you read it that it's written by two people. I think the style is its own style and is very readable just as it is.
We worked very hard with our editor, Stephanie Pitts, and we went back and forth a lot with, I did a draft and I passed it on and she rewrote it and passed it back, and we went back and forth. So the book does have its own voice.
That's awesome. So I guess it does take a really good editor to make sure that everything is seamless. So I'm not reading and then all of a sudden it starts to look a little different.
Yeah, and I think we also learned each other's style. I write nonfiction for younger kids, and so I'm like short, clear sentences, and Elizabeth is the PhD who likes a long.
I like the semicolons.
Semicolon sentences. So you'll see there's a blend of both of those, but I definitely went through and took out semicolons, and she went through and combined my sentences.
See, I can see now that Elizabeth, you and I would get along well. I sometimes like longer sentences, but I like to combine sentences. So sometimes I'll take two shorter sentences, like we can put that together. But I guess it kind of depends, though. Maybe how do you want the flow of your paragraph or your narrative to be? Sometimes shorter sentences will help you to read a little bit faster, while the longer sentences kind of slow your pace down a little bit.
Yeah, and sometimes I felt like you needed a longer sentence to to make the transition from one thought to the next. So like you had two short sentences that really didn't seem entirely connected, but if you combined them, you could kind of it helped with the transition. I don't know. I mean that's true in my own writing, you know. I'm
That
not
works. That's true.
I'm not criticizing Sherri's writing.
Well, I would say conversely, the shorter sentences, you're right. If you want an action sequence or
Yeah.
things are getting too academic or too informational and you want a scene to really pop,
Yeah.
then you go for the shorter, punchy sentences, especially because there's so many hilarious stories in this book
Yeah.
of the adventures this group of pioneering Black aviators had, you know, airplane crashes. Things
Right.
like that you want to
Oh.
be punchy, you know, or funny sequences. And so
Yeah. Like, you know, when Hubert Julian gets mad at John Robinson and approaches him in his hotel lobby waving newspaper articles that he wrote about him, and he's like, you did this, and they have a punch up, you know. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that you want to keep the action going. So yeah.
See, I hope everybody's listening, because this is a total masterclass on writing right now. I'm really enjoying this. I'm just listening to you go back and forth.
Yeah, well, especially collaboration, because it's not
Yes.
easy to write with another person. I've only done it once, and as far as published, and it was my daughter, so you know I had a little bit more
Yeah.
control in that kind of situation. But
So
I do want to ask that the four people that you feature, do they know each other?
oh
yes.
yeah.
Are they like in the same unit? Are they
Absolutely.
okay?
They interact with each other. I mean, there are falling out, you know, they
Well,
don't
let's
all
frame it-
end up
let's frame
together.
the story. We'll frame the story
Go
is
ahead.
that this young man, Cornelius Coffey, out of Arkansas through Omaha, Nebraska, he ends up in Chicago to learn to be an auto mechanic, and then in Detroit, where he meets another auto mechanic, John C. Robinson, and they, much like Elizabeth and me, did not think they were going to get along. And then because they then realized that they both had a dream of flying, but no way of learning how to do it. So they both end up back in Chicago, and they, by hook or by crook, bully their way finally into a school that would not accept Black people, but by threat of lawsuit and by being incredibly smart and clever and talented and building their own airplane, they get into these classes, graduate at the top of their class, and do so well that the head of the school, who had rejected them originally, said, if you think there are other Black people who want to learn to fly, we'll let you teach that class. And so through the classes they taught, they then meet Janet Harmon Bragg, and eventually they meet Willa Brown, who also learns to fly from them. They have a fan club, a flying fan club, basically, that turns into a group of aviators.
Oh,
And
okay.
eventually, when after Johnny Robinson goes to Ethiopia and he ends up sort of, you know, flying and for Haile Selassie and helping him with his very small air force. When he comes back is when things start to fall apart between him and Coffey, who had really started out as friends and collaborators. But at that point, Willa Brown kind of picks up where the management side of things, where Johnny leaves off. And between them, Coffey and Willa Brown end up running a flight school together and working for the civilian pilot training program during World War II, and training pilots who eventually become the Tuskegee Airmen and helping to integrate the U.S. Air Force. So like it's almost a story of pay it forward. The people definitely all know each other. And way down the line, in the 1980s, people started actually recognizing some of their contributions and got them back together, the ones of them that were still alive.
So, what is the time frame for the book? I mean, in terms of years, like, or decades.
So
It starts in what decade and ends in what
So
decade?
there's a prologue in 1919, because that is when Cornelius Coffey, as a teenager, took his first flight. with a barnstormer who had been a World War I vet. But the story really picks up in 1927 and goes through 1948. And I should go back a little bit in aviation history and point out that before these guys were around, the first Black American flyers were a guy named Eugene Bullard, who fled to France when he was a teenager because he came from the South and wanted to escape Jim Crow. And when World War I started, he wanted to learn to fly and offered to fly for the United States in the war, and they wouldn't take him because he was Black. And the French welcomed him, and he became a French pilot and hero. And after him, there was Bessie Coleman, who'd been a hairdresser in Chicago, and she goes to France to learn to fly and becomes the first Black American woman, and she was part Native American woman to hold, and first American to hold an international pilot's license. So she had a dream of opening flight schools for people of color in the United States. She died before that could happen, but not before Cornelius Coffey and John C. Robinson learned about her and looked up to her. And so they actually flew memorial services over her grave every year. While they were a flying club together, they would drop flowers from an airplane onto her grave. So it is paying it forward. It was like Eugene and Bessie helped crack open the glass ceiling to the sky, and then more and more pilots of color started doing the same and making sure to leave it open for the next generation. Coffey went on to teach aviation mechanics in high school in Chicago, well into the 80s.
Wow,
Oh, okay. Wow.
that's
Yeah.
quite a while.
That is.
Yeah. He was the oldest. He was born first and he lived the longest, and he
Yeah.
flew up until about a couple of years before he died in his 90s.
Oh, okay, boy. So, what is depicted on the cover of the book? What is that a picture of?
So that is actually early on. So we're talking 1932. These guys decided that, and this was when Coffey and Johnny were still really working together. In fact, it was when they were both still teaching together at Aeronautical University. They decided that they wanted to have their own airfield. And they had been sharing airfields with white pilots in Chicago, and race relations were not running entirely smoothly, and they wanted an airfield of their own. And they ended up at Robbins, Illinois, which was incorporated as an all-Black township, and it had Black mayor and firemen, and they ran things themselves, and they rented land from them. And they basically, is in the middle of the Great Depression. They cleared the land themselves. They dug a boulder the size of a car out of the ground. They couldn't lift it. So eventually they dug a huge hole around it and just dropped it in and covered it up. And they built a hangar themselves. And what you see on the cover is the hangar that they built. Johnny Robinson drew up the blueprints for the hangar, and apparently they could only build it when he was around because nobody else could read his writing. But what you see is the aircraft, that they had 3 aircraft in there. One was actually belonged to one of the white pilots that they had flown with previously, and one belonged to Coffey, and one belonged to Janet, who had a good job as a nurse and was the financer of the group. So she had bought her own plane before she could fly. And
I love that. I love
I
that.
know,
She's
isn't
like
that cool?
this black woman with the best job of the group and the money and willing to put it into the things she dreams about. So if you look at that picture, you'll see the very dapper guy in the flight cap and trench coat at the end is Johnny, and Janet is leaning up against the plane all in white. And so that was their group. They were called the Brown Eagle Aero Club, but at this point they changed their name to the Challenger. The Challengers, which was named after one of the engines used in these early planes.
I think what interests me most is that, and if I'm hearing this correctly, These aren't just military aviators you're talking
Oh,
about.
not at all. This was so okay.
Yeah,
Let's go
so
back a little bit there.
Okay.
Black people were not allowed to fly in the military until towards the end of World War II. So the Tuskegee Airmen were originally called the Tuskegee Experiment, because in
right.
1921 the United States military commissioned a study about the use of Black man or Negro manpower, I believe it was called. And in it, they said that Black people were not smart enough or brave enough to be good soldiers. And they certainly didn't think they could fly. And so it was an uphill battle fought on many different fronts in order to allow African Americans to be trained as pilots in the United States and allow them to actually fly in the military. So there were lawsuits and lots of lobbying by Coffey's group and Tuskegee and other groups, first to get into the civilian pilot training program that prepared pilots in case we did enter World War II, and then to have some of those programs turned into military training programs, as Tuskegee finally was. And so these are the precursor to Blacks being in the military. And then it is only in 1948 that Harry S. Truman then desegregates the military.
That's an amazing point, and I'm very, very glad that you make it, because I think often when we think of Black aviators, we forget about the people who weren't in the military. We just automatically default to Tuskegee Airmen, and you know, we're thankful for their contributions, but they weren't the only Black aviators. So that makes this book even more important, I feel.
And I feel like my husband said when he read the book, you know, it sounds like there were a lot more people than these ones that you actually focused on. And it's true. There was a group of Black aviators in New York City. There was another group in Los Angeles. And presumably there were others flying throughout the USA. One of the things that these guys did was they nationalized their organization. They made a group called the National Aviators Association of America, and all the members were Black, and they had air meets where people would fly from all over the country to get together and share experiences and work on lobbying and, you know, have aviation competitions. So they really were networking with the other flyers throughout the USA. And this is in the late 1930s, and we aren't aware of them. They're all civilians.
I would go so far as to say, like, one of Coffey's things was integration. So in all of his classes in his school, he made sure there was at least one white person and one woman to prove to the military and to the US government that we could all learn together. And so while the membership of the NAAA was mostly Black, they chose not to put Negro in the name as they had thought of originally, because they didn't want to limit themselves. So some of these air shows were integrated air shows, some of the first integrated air shows. And I think that's really important, that there was this sense that the sky could be a new frontier where equality reigned. That's why the subtitle of our book is Chicago's Pioneering Black Aviators and the Race for Equality in the Sky, because you have a lot of people during the Great Migration coming to these city centers with dreams. And one of those was the dream of flight, really unified in a way by the big Black newspapers of the time. The Chicago Defender was a huge proponent of race flyers, as they would call them. And so then you had this, the Negro Associated Press sharing these stories all around the nation to really sort of uplift everyone. Our guys were key to that. But yeah, there's some other great stories out there still to be told.
Yeah.
Well, I hope that we continue to tell them, because this is what our history is all about. We can't keep learning about the same people over and over again.
Right. And I'm glad we're learning with new people that are starting to get their due, that people who were doing really amazing, innovative things. One thing I wanted to add, and I don't have the exact information right in front of me because it just came to mind. But a lot of the early professional Black organizations that could not join the American whatever, I think the American Medical Association was one of them. They used national in their name instead of American because they couldn't be a part of the white organization, but they wanted to not necessarily put Negro in their name, like you were talking about earlier. And several of them use national. The only one I can think of right now is the medical one, but there were some other ones as well. And I read about this years ago. I can't remember, it was years ago when I read about it, but yeah, a lot of things that we take for granted now, there were a lot of parallel organizations that we started ourselves because we could not be part of the white organizations, or what we call the big organizations. But that did not stop us from moving forward, organizing, and being our best.
Amen.
Absolutely right.
Well, ladies, unfortunately, we've come to the end of the half hour. But if you can remind us, please, how we can reach out to you, how we can find this wonderful book. I would tell you to show us the cover, but I already see it behind you.
It is. And somebody said lawyers too. I'm pretty sure there was a national the lawyers organization because they couldn't join the American, whatever the one was, the other one. So anyway, this has been an amazing conversation, and congratulations to you two on a wonderful collaboration. Thank you, Elizabeth, for either staying up or getting up.
Kind of both.
And letting us meet you both. And I'm glad that you all wanted to come on together, because I originally reached out to Sherri, not realizing that it was a co-author book, because I think I saw an article about Sherri, and I pulled up the information, like the flyer about the book, and then that was great. But I'm glad that was wonderful.
Well, I owe it to her because she graciously said, well, you must have my co-author on as well.
Right. And I appreciate that very much. So thank you
for
both.
having us both. And you can, you know what, you can find us online. Our names are our website, and
Okay.
and we're both on Instagram. And the book is American Wings, Chicago's Pioneering Aviators and the Race for Equality in the Sky. Thank you so much for having us on.
Well,
Okay,
thank
thank
you
so
for
much.
being here. Best wishes on your book. I will be reading it. It sounds amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great one.
Well, next, one thing I want to add is, as you all who watch the show regularly know, every year we do the Black Authors Matter TV Awards. And the final show that's included in the awards is next week. So we do from March to March as far as the guests on the show that are included. And then they're broken down into categories for votes. And everybody who's been on the show is part of the nomination process in that 12-month period of time. And then the finalists, you all vote on the first list, which is the complete list. And then the finalists are the top 5 vote getters in each of those categories, and you vote again. And then we have the award show, which will be, I believe, May 14th. So stay tuned, and we're ready for our next guest.
Well, the next guest isn't here, so we're just going to keep on talking.
Oh, the next guest isn't here. Well, do we have, you know what? And she didn't send in her form. So let me see if I have her phone number. It's a bookstore, and it's KRC Bookstores, Tammy Martin. I communicated with her several times. Let me go off screen for about a minute, see if I can reach out to her.
So while Gwen is gone, I do want to announce, if you have a teenager in your life who will be graduating from high school, over the weekend, I launched the Meet the World Image Solutions Graduating Senior scholarship. I will be giving away $1,000 this May, and the scholarship is nationwide, so it doesn't matter where you are located. All you have to do is complete the application, show proof of community service, because my scholarship is not just based on grades. It's also based on community service. It's kind of a holistic type of scholarship. So if you're a good student, if your teachers or your administrators can vouch for you, if you can show proof of community service, then that means that you qualify for this scholarship. It's not just about grades. Grades are only a piece of it. So if you have a teenager, make sure that you get them to take advantage of this, because I don't care if you have a full ride scholarship, you are still going to need money for books. You're going to need pocket money. There are so many things that teenagers need money for in college. So don't let them pass up on this money. And I'll tell you, my daughter didn't have to pay for college, but she was calling every day saying, "Mom, can I have some money?" or "Mom, can I do this or that or the other?" So this money is there for whichever teenager wants to go to college. As long as they're in college, they qualify for the scholarship. So please make sure that they take part in that. So keep your eye on the Meet the World Image Solutions Facebook and Instagram pages. I will have the graphic up tomorrow, and there's a QR code where you can scan the code to download the scholarship. So we have that. And is Gwen back yet? No, Gwen's not back yet. So also, National Black Book Festival is coming up in October. So I believe that there is still space available. Gwen can tell you more about that. But I actually had some people from my event over the weekend who have already registered to be a part of the National Black Book Festival. So I know slots are filling up very quickly. So hopefully, if you are an author, we will see you there in October in Houston. Okay, now I'm running out of announcements, so hopefully Gwen will be coming back pretty soon.
I'm back. I'm trying to find the phone number. Because I communicated with her several times, and I don't know. She didn't notify us that she wouldn't be on. And so I was not expecting her not to be. So one thing I do want to mention is the book festival, as you said. The early registration ends the end of March. So the early bird registration for authors and publishers and whoever wants to sign up for vendor space, it ends then. And we have the most favorable rates during that time. So that's the time that you'll want to sign up if you can. And you only have to put down a small deposit, and then the balance is due to July 31st. We are ahead of our registrations from last year to this year. And last year we sold out by the end of July of all of the space, and we weren't able to take any more people. So if you really want to come, it's going to be great. We have a couple of additional things that we're doing for certain. We are doing the book to film seminar that we do is been on Fridays, but this year we're having it on Saturday, so more people can attend it, because a lot of people are interested in the book to film. And Entice is going to be back to do that seminar. We're also bringing back the seminar on building your social media influence, because a lot of people understand social media, they're active on it. A lot of people don't really understand it, and they're not that active, and they want to get more followers or just get more exposure on social media, because it does help you build an audience. If you're an author, it helps you build readers, your readership. So we're having a seminar on that as well. And we have the publishers panel we're having again. And so it's going to be a great event. once again, this will be year 17 for
Wow,
us.
that's amazing. And like
Yeah.
I said, year 8, I'm going on year 9.
Yeah, time goes by really fast.
It does. It
And
does.
if you keep going, you really can build on what you've done in the past. And if anyone has a suggestion on a topic they'd like to see us cover at the event, let us know and we'll see how we can incorporate it in the lineup we already have. There's some seminars that are they're backed by popular demand. We have them every year. And so they're standard ones that we do. And then authors sponsor seminars themselves. So it would be something that we would have to incorporate probably for 2025. But we would love to hear from you. You can always send us a direct message or send us an email, and we would love to hear from you as far as suggestions on topics. And also, we recently crossed 95,000 followers on our Facebook
I saw
page.
that.
Yeah, 95,000. So 100,000 is what I am looking forward to crossing. That's a major, major milestone. When we get 100,000 followers, we generally get 200 to 300 every week, new ones. So that's really good. Now, have we heard anything from our guest? No, she hasn't signed on. Okay, well, what we can do during this time is we can take any suggestions or comments or questions that you all want to present to us. We do have a little downtime. When the person who's our last
Who are
guest,
some authors that you would like to see on the show?
yeah, tell us that. And here's the caveat: you can't name yourself. So if you have an author, because I know authors, if you have an author that we haven't had on, or one we haven't had on in a while, because we've had a lot of guests, over 600, then let us know and we'll reach out to them and see if they're available, to see if we can schedule them. We have some good ones coming up for future weeks, new releases that are coming out. We have most of March is already booked, not the entire month, but most of the month is already completely booked. So we are looking forward to what's in store for us for the rest of the year. It's going to be amazing. I'm just wondering how many people will end up interviewing. I guess it keeps going up and up and up. So we crossed 600. So 700 is the next milestone for individual guests, not interviews, individual guests. So sometime in the summer, we'll probably get to 700.
Yeah.
Sometime in the summer. So let's see. Does anybody have? Lydia said that she loves the book that she's reading that she won. So there's a book that Lydia won, and I don't remember which one it was that we sent her. Lydia, if you wanted to say which one it was, you can. So yeah, we would love to have feedback from those who are viewing audience, and also if you want to just let your friends know that tag them or share and let them know the show is on, although we are awaiting our next guest. So
well, Bernita says she wishes that we were on YouTube too.
Oh, well, we are, but it's not live on YouTube.
Yeah.
And with the challenges we have just being live on Facebook, I don't know if I want to add to it another platform that may or may not work. It's if you have 2 a night, you have to make sure are working.
Mm-hmm.
Normally our Facebook live, the show, it gets edited a little bit, like just to make sure there's no dead time at all. And then it gets uploaded to YouTube. It's normally within 3 days after the show. And then it's also on the top 6 podcast platforms. So people can listen to it on Apple, Spotify, the top 6, whatever they are. I always watch.
Oh, so we're around.
We're around. We're in a lot of places.
Oh goodness.
So she's but live, she can't see us. Why can't you see us, Bernita? You can't see us on Facebook. She might not be on Facebook. No,
Yeah,
some
maybe.
people don't. Can you watch stuff on Facebook if you don't have a Facebook account? Maybe not.
Sometimes you can. It depends on the settings of the posts that you make.
Okay. Okay, because I don't know. Some people.
Bernita says she wants us live on the big
live
screen.
on the big screen, which like you can do YouTube on your TV. Maybe that's what she means.
Maybe she wants us to be in movies.
Maybe so. I would love to. Because people my 2 novels, everybody says there should be movies or series, but if it's gonna happen, it would have to be, this a lot of work to go that route, because you have to have a script. You have to do a treatment and then a script, and then
It's a lot.
It's a lot. And then you have to have money, because I wouldn't want to have a low budget looking type production.
That has always been my fear, and that's why I'm kind of slow rolling turning my books into movies, because people ask me a lot. But and I was actually talking with a movie producer over the weekend, and basically what he was saying is that if you don't do it right, even if it's a great story, people are just going to remember that it was terrible. In fact, no, that wasn't that movie producer who was saying it. That was my daughter who said that about a certain movie that she saw over the weekend that she hated. And I'm not going to say the name of the movie, y'all.
Was it on Tubi?
No. No, it wasn't on Tubi.
I haven't actually watched a movie on Tubi yet. I've watched old shows.
I haven't, but my boyfriend watches a lot of movies on Tubi. But sometimes I think he hate watches, because he'll be watching like the really bad movies on YouTube and then make fun of how bad they are. But I've heard that there are a lot of really good movies on YouTube. I mean, on Tubi as well, and not just a bunch of bad movies.
I've heard that too, but when you get used to a certain level of production, even looking at older films, older movies that were at the movies, the films that were like in the 70s or even some of the 80s, just the production is different. And also the pixels, the HD is not there.
Yeah.
Even if you have HD TV, that the movie may not be. So it's just different. And I would, if I can't do it like a major, at least like Netflix quality, even though Netflix can be hit and miss too in terms of some of their stuff.
Oh my goodness, it depends on which Netflix movie it is.
Yeah, because sometimes Netflix is the same movie but with just different people, different characters, the same plot. Some of it can be repetitious. Every now and then you get a good one,
Right.
But a lot of them are very, very repetitious, and some of them just don't make sense.
Mm-mm.
And I watched one recently. Then we're talking about random stuff because we have to fill the time. As soon as the next guest logs on, because Rhonda's doing the duty as the host, we can bring her on.
Yeah, I'm sitting here waiting for the name to pop across the screen
for the last guest. But I looked at one thing I look for when I watch movies or anything. I look at symbolism. I'm real big on symbolism. Yeah. I have a book really that I'm planning to. I've been thinking about writing and making notes on it for a long time, because there's certain themes in films and a lot of people miss them, because if you're not tuned in, you miss them. But one thing is, Black people are expendable. That is a theme in movies. And that's why the Black character gets killed first or gets killed or whatever, or doesn't make it to the end, or they die because So
I
the
just thinking
other,
they die in the stupidest way possible.
yes, yes. Or they died so that the main character, the white character, can have some kind of growth, or it's all for the good, all for like for the greater good. But
Mhm.
at any rate, the black characters die. So the theme in a lot of movies, and I know I'm not the only one who's noticed this because it's just so commonplace. Black people are expendable in Hollywood. So I was watching Netflix, and it's a new limited series called The Tourist. Have you seen that one advertised? It's new. It came out a couple of weeks
Taurus?
ago. The Tourist.
No, I don't think I've seen that one.
Okay, it's about a guy who gets in an accident and then he loses his memory. He gets amnesia. He doesn't know who he is. But there are two black people in that series. And when I first saw those two people, I said, you know what? They're gonna die. They're gonna get killed for the end of this series. I just know it. That's what always happens. Sure enough, the two black characters. One was a cop, and the other one was a female, like scam artist, vixen.
Mm.
She played a scam artist slash vixen. They both died. Now, some people might say that's just coincidence. No, it's not a coincidence because somebody has to write these stories and somebody has to do the casting. And those are all intentional actions.
I don't know if you saw Curtis's comment. He said, I would love for you to invite the author, Randy Pink, back on the show. I read her book, Angel of Greenwood, that I won on the show, and have become a huge fan of her work.
Well, have we had Randy on? I don't think we've had Randy on. We just had
I
her
don't
book.
remember her being on, but we may have given away her book.
Yeah, we gave away her book. I
Yeah.
remember Angela Greenwood. Okay, well, thank you, Curtis, for that suggestion. I would reach out to Randy Pink.
So what are you reading right now?
What am I reading? I am reading, what's the title of the darn book? Tracy Clark was on the show a couple of weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago. She had 2 books about Chicago detective.
Mm.
The first one, and I just can't, the name of it is escaping me. I'm going to look it up just because it's driving me nuts not to know what it is. But anyway, I'm going to look it up while I'm but the second one is called Fall.
Okay. I'm reading one of Barack Obama's, he had his list of books that he read, his top 10 list.
Mm-hmm.
He had Heaven and Earth Grocery Store on the list. So that's what
Okay, McBride by James McBride.
Yes.
Okay. So how is it?
I like the characters. The characters have a lot of layers, and I like the way he introduces a character and brings he kind of gives the history of the character and then brings them into the story to where it all makes sense. And he doesn't take so long to get to it, so you're like lost, like what is he talking about?
Okay.
It all really comes together really well.
Okay, now her first book was called Hide. Remember her, she had one word titles. And it was 20 years. She had been writing for 20 years and finally got a break. So Hide is the first book, and there's a character that's a detective in Chicago. And then the sequel is called Fall. And
Okay.
so I got both of them. And I just started Hide, so I'm not that far into it, maybe 30 pages or so. But she's a good writer.
Okay. Well, Katie's here.
Okay, so we are going to bring on our final guest. And thank you all for your patience. Curtis, thank you for the suggestion. And I will reach out to Randy Pink to see about getting her on the show. Okay, so Katie.
Lydia, well, as I'm bringing in the next guest, Lydia wants to know if we ever read just for fun. And Sean Hartley wants us to bring Bakari Sellers back on the show.
Well, I don't know, Sean, do you know that Bakari was a guest on the show before?
And at the National Black Book
And
Festival.
at the National Black Book Festival. But we can always invite him back. I think he might have a new book coming out. I think I read that. Do I ever read just for fun? Um, well, I read for entertainment mostly and for to be informed. And I consider reading is my number one hobby. So yes, all of my reading is fun. Unless if it becomes not fun, that means that book I stop reading. If I'm not having enjoyment when I'm reading a book, something it has to get me.
Yeah, it has to be
then,
enjoyable.
then I put it down. So if it's not fun, I put it down. So anyway, Katie, we brought you on a little bit early. So but Katie, and your last name is pronounced Otey?
Odie.
Odie. Okay, Odie. Okay. Thank you for
Welcome to
being
the
a
show,
guest
Katie.
and
Thank
welcome
you.
to the show.
Thanks.
And you're a children's author.
Yes, I am. I
And
mainly
your
write for children.
okay, and your latest book is, do you have a copy of it?
My latest book is not published yet. It's coming out in May.
Okay.
Called Izzy's Almost Epic Day. It's a middle grade book.
Okay.
And I do have a copy of my most recent picture book, Every Other Christmas, that came out in September of 2022. So,
Okay. All right. Now hold that up again.
okay.
I like that this is the presents under the tree and they're doing Christmas decorations.
Yes, and if you open it all the way, you can see.
Oh, okay. Oh,
He
that's
alternates,
nice.
yeah. He alternates the Christmas holiday between the parents they're divorced. So he shows like what are the different traditions between my African American mother's family and my Colombian father's family. So it just touches base on a lot of children have to, alternate holidays. I did add another culture so that we can see that we're not all that different. We may do some things differently, but the core of who we are as humans is the same. So, and it's a
Oh,
very positive story.
that's a real innovative way of dealing with that topic. And it is more and more common with people getting divorced or just children not living with both of their parents. Then
Right,
you have to decide what you're going to do for the holidays. And
right,
not everybody will do what my husband and I did, which when my husband and I were both married before, but I didn't have any children by my first husband, and it was a brief marriage. And so he had three children by his first wife, and he had custody of his two sons when we got married. And we decided, and we had a good relationship with the ex-wife. So we decided we were going to have Christmas together
that's
every
amazing.
and we alternate who hosts it. So we've been married 31 years and we still do that.
That's amazing. I love that. I love that.
So with the grandkids now, with his grandkids, we had a daughter. She's 27, so she has the three siblings, and she doesn't call them step siblings. She just calls them her
Right.
brothers and sisters. But we have always had Christmas together, and we actually have Thanksgiving together too. Most years, it made it easier because the kids didn't have to try to figure out whose house. They didn't have to try to spend 2 hours here, 2 hours there. It was just, and it worked because we had a good relationship. So,
Right, right,
but not everybody's able to do that. And so I
right.
like
But
your book is really neat that you
mm,
have that as a theme.
yeah, I just really like to show my main thing when I write mainly is to show the positive. Um, I
Okay.
feel like as an African American reader, um, we get a lot of stories that are hard. Um, there's a lot of struggle in books that are made for us, and I feel like that we aren't just our struggle, we're more than that. And so I like to write the comedy or the love or the, the positive spin. Obviously life is not just all fun and games, but it's definitely more than just struggle. So
I'm very glad that more authors are embracing that, because I think at one time it did seem like children's, at least Black children's books were always either trying to teach a lesson, trying to discuss the struggle. And I think when we do that, sometimes we miss the beauty of just being a child. And so
right.
sometimes we have to show our kids that it's okay to just be. We don't always have to be the spokesperson for the race. We don't always have to be the historian or the teacher or the instructor. Sometimes we can just be kids. And
Exactly.
so I'm glad that you're embracing that.
Thank you. Thank you. That was the main theme for my middle grade book that's coming out. It does feature a Black boy who's 11, and he just wants to have this epic day, but every hour, each chapter is 1 hour of his day. Something kind of goes awry, something goes wrong, but in a kind of like a comedic sense of the word. And he's not magical. There's nothing out of the ordinary. He's a kid who's having a day in middle school, and things are just like a little crazy, and his family is big, and it's just contemporary, it's real life but funny. And I think that if we did a little bit more of that, we can really help with our literacy rates. We get tired of reading about um, the struggle. It's just, I know as a young reader, I felt that way, and I hear that a lot. So,
When I was a young reader, I don't remember reading anything heavy. Of course, I was reading in earlier years, let me say that. But I don't now there weren't a lot of Black books that I don't remember reading a lot of Black books other than something that was truly history. But um I don't remember reading anything heavy. You know what I mean? And some people will say, well, it's real life. Well, children, they'll have time to live the real life, you know. When they're kids, let them be kids,
exactly.
you know,
Exactly.
because that's the only time they'll be able to be with. There's only one carefree time in your life if you're lucky enough to have stability at home.
Right.
Once you go to college and have to work, it's not carefree anymore. So,
It's not.
let
Really,
kids be
let them
kids.
in a book,
Yeah.
it life can be hard for any child, no matter the race, but especially for Black kids in this country, it's there's a lot of lessons that they have to learn out in the world. And
Yes.
if I
Yeah.
pick up a book, I don't want to relearn those lessons and relive that trauma. I want to escape, and I want, to see a character that I can actually be, that I can see myself living that life or see myself as that character. And I want to escape and have fun and laugh and enjoy and see some of the things that I do with my family. In every other Christmas, there's a part where the family, the African American side of the family, there's several scenes that were very important to me. But there's one scene where they are line dancing to the Temptations, uh,
Yes.
the Temptations, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, and you can see like everyone's, dancing.
Oh,
That's a song that we hear, and it's just a fun moment. And then when he's with his Colombian family, they're dancing to, some merengue or, something else like that. But he fits in no matter where he goes. And then there's food. You have the table where they're holding hands and they're going to say their prayer and they're eating the fried chicken and the macaroni and cheese and the cornbread and, you know, foods that we like when we're celebrating. That should feel normal. Um, and so I did read a lot. I read a lot, a lot. And most of the characters that I read growing up, they were white characters. If I read a black book, usually it was some type of lesson. It was, you know, um, let me learn about this black person, or let
Right. It
me
was history.
about my skin or my hair, that type of thing. And it's just kind of like, can we just be like funny?
Got that face. I saw the face.
Lighten it up a little bit, it doesn't
Very,
have to be heavy, you
it
know.
doesn't. And so that's just what I bring. And the reason why I kind of concentrate on that is because I just want to give that little bit of joy and wonder to someone who reads my books.
Yeah.
So do you think that you're going to remain in the children's author space, the children's book space?
I like to write for everyone. Um, I write poetry. I have written a young adult manuscript. So I do want to write for adults. I just like to tell stories. I love telling stories. And writing for children is kind of like a nod to my five children, and how funny they are, and watching them grow up and just their antics. But I definitely want to write for adults as well, and a will.
So what are your children's ages? What's
My
the
youngest
range?
child is Jace, he's 14. Um, he's my youngest, and then Isaiah is just turned 18. Then Jacqueline is 23. And then we have AJ, who is 25. And then my beautiful stepdaughter, Jonassy, she did pass away in April, but she was 28. So,
Oh, I'm
and,
sorry for your
and she,
loss.
thank you. She's always, we don't do step this and that.
Hmm.
She's my daughter, and I have a beautiful
Daughter
relationship
is
with
your
her
daughter.
mom still. And so, yeah, the my Izzy book features the five children in the story are fashioned after my children. Yeah, they're fictional characters, but I gave them, the same quirks. And so it really hits home that this is getting published, and it's a nod to them. Some of the things that they did when they were growing up that I found hilarious. And I kept notes on them throughout the years. So I can't wait for it to be released and see how it's received.
So who did your illustrations in that every other Christmas book? The illustrations look really beautiful.
Very
Thank
detailed.
you. Yeah, she did a great job. Her name is S.J. Winkler. She's someone that I met in writing group. And so the publisher who published this book, I didn't publish it myself. Sky Pony
Okay.
Press published it. And they asked me, which is rare, do I have an illustrator? I'm like, absolutely. So she actually drew a lot of the characters to represent my family. So that was
Okay.
like an extra special little twist. So most of my family, they can recognize who they are in the story. But she did a great job. And she also illustrated the first book that I published through my own publishing company called Sister, which is a
Okay.
foster adoption story. She did a beautiful, amazing job. And it actually got what's called a Kirkus Star review. So it's like, for
Oh
that
yeah,
to
I
be
know
my
about
first,
Kirkus.
my
Hmm.
first book published on my own, got a Kirkus Star.
Oh,
Um, so even though I didn't write that book, I had a big hand in, developing it, and it was a proud moment.
okay. Yeah, that's really, really nice. What did you say the sister book was about?
It's a
Adoption?
foster to adoption stories about a
Okay.
family
Okay.
decide to become foster parents, and how the child feels when children come in the home, and then she gets close to them, but then they're reunified with their first families, which is the point of foster care.
Mhm.
And just dealing with that emotion between the child and the parents, and then the last child that comes in that they foster, they wind up adopting, and she becomes a sister and gains a sister. So, and that was written by Leah M. Johnson. So
Okay. Yeah, that's definitely a timely story.
it
Very,
Very
is.
talented.
very, very relevant to today
It,
and
a
much
lot of
needed.
a lot of talk about what people should be doing, with their bodies, and should they have babies, and what if they can't take care of them, and you need foster parents for people who can't, and then that it's not as easy as it seems. It's definitely needed, but Leia takes a community approach. Like we are all one community, and we need to look out for one another. And so she's writing a book that we will be publishing from the adult side, like her own journey as a foster parent, for adults. But this was her nod to needing this type of story in the children's book world that actually dealt with humans and not just animals, and things like that. So
Yeah, we have a lady at our church that fosters newborns, like babies whose mothers, some of them were, addicted to something.
right.
And she would keep them until they found an adopted family. But this last one she kept, I think she's like 6 years old now.
Oh,
But she said she would have separation anxiety,
it's
after she would have when you have a baby and you really get attached,
right.
it would be
It's
challenging.
definitely difficult. And then if you have children, those children have those big emotions and they don't know how to process them. And that's why we felt the story was important to put out there. So
Right. Now, for your every other Christmas book, what made you pick Columbia as your uh, the other side of the family?
for several reasons. I had close ties to Colombia, and a lot of Colombian friends. I also feel like Colombia kind of doesn't get the best representation in media. Every time you hear about Colombia, it's the cartel or Pablo Escobar or cocaine, or it's just kind of like how I feel like when the Cosby Show came out, everyone was like, "Well, is that really realistic?" Like, yeah, Black people have jobs and families and you know standards, and we need to put more in the media that shows that. And so, I feel like it's the media's responsibility on how we portray our fellow humans, and so that was a big reason why I chose Colombia, in addition to my close ties.
Okay. Well, look, I like the cross-cultural aspect of it,
Thank
and
you.
that you had it on the cover, on the front and the back. That's really
Yeah,
neat.
yes,
Now,
I
is
thought
that a hardcover or is it a is
every
it
other
printed
Christmas.
on the book or is it a sleeve?
This is the sleeve, um,
Okay. Okay.
but it's also printed on the book.
Oh,
Oh, very
okay.
pretty. Okay.
Okay, very
So,
nice.
so you have the hardbacks and the soft covers?
For every other Christmas, it's just in hardcover. For Sister is in both. So
Okay.
yeah. And then Izzy's Almost Epic Day, that's just gonna be a paperback book, middle grade book.
Okay, now
Okay,
do
so
you
the new book you said is going to be released in May.
It's gonna be released in May. It's up for pre-order on my website, Phoenix Media and
Okay,
Books.
and we did put your website in the chat.
Okay,
So guys, go to the website, click on the website. Let's pre-order this book.
please. Pre-orders are so important. Um,
They absolutely are.
so do you have a background as an educator or you just like writing, reading and writing?
I'm gonna be honest, I was a teacher. I taught algebra. I
Okay,
have
well,
I have a bachelor's degree in mathematics, and
okay.
I'm in love with numbers and letters, so I'm a little strange. I've always loved to read. I learned how to read when I was 3, and books were a big part of my upbringing, but I never even thought about being an author. It wasn't something that you're guided to a lot of the time. And so math was my second love, and I taught that for a while. But I've always told stories and written stories. I've written 10 books, 12 books so far, and I'm just getting around to, after kind of fighting with the traditional publishing market and overcoming a lot of the bias about what types of stories I can write. I decided to open my own publishing company because I'm like, I'm not going to keep having this argument about the types of stories I want to write, and what they think would sell to my people or anyone. My stories are for anyone, but they're going to prominently feature Black people doing, living out loud, and anyone can read those stories. So,
Yeah, it's amazing how that industry, which is dominated by non-Black people, they feel empowered to tell us what Black people will read. And I just find that to be ballsy, excuse me, but I just think that is,
it's,
really audacious in a negative way. I just, so I didn't go that route either. Just because I know what I want to write. I know what I want to say. I know how I want to say it. I know about editors, but I'm a good writer, and I know if only 5 people like my story, I would be happy with that. But it just so happens all of my books sell every month. So, and my new book is really
Five
doing
people
well.
like your book. If only
Hmm.
5 people like your book, and they have come to expect a certain quality from that book, then you've got to make those 5 people happy, because they're expecting a certain quality from your work, and you got to respect those people. So I like that piece of it.
Yeah, and not every book is going to sell 1 million copies. In fact, hardly any sell that many. So, finding your audience or people who appreciate your subject matter is important. And you have to get out there and you have to get it in front of people.
yes.
You have to be able to sell your book. You have to be able to pitch your book when you're in person with people also. But book clubs are a good avenue for novels. Um, and it's all kinds of different ways you can find readers. So, but I didn't want somebody to end it because I knew that's what they would say, that, well, this won't work or whatever. Yes, it will work. It's just a matter of the person who is behind it. Do they believe in it?
And
So I
yeah,
believe in my work. So, you know,
a lot of the time, one thing I realized, I entered the professional writing world in 2012. I joined the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, and they're like the industry organization for children's book writers. And I had a very strong work ethic, and I still do. And I went to all kind of conferences, and my writing just improved, and I just could not get further. I couldn't get past the gatekeepers of the industry. I did finally land an agent, but she was someone I knew, who became an agent, and she loved my writing. But I think the eye opener for me was I entered a diversity contest, and in that contest, you submitted a writing sample, and if they liked it, you got to go to the agent round, and the agent would either sign you or they would give you critique, which is a big deal because it's so hard to get, any type of critique.
mhm.
And I entered a book that I wrote about a Black genie who had an attitude. She was tired of bringing witches. It was a comedy. And, it's my favorite story. And I thought it was hilarious. And it made it. It made it to the agent round. And I was like, I cannot wait to see either A, if they're going to offer to sign me finally, or what good information I'm going to get. And I got this like harsh rejection.
Mm.
And the rejection was that this is not the degree of marginalization we're looking for. And I was like, what?
The degree of marginalization.
Right. It wasn't Black enough.
Okay,
And
now they're saying it in a different way. That's why and
Right.
I don't care what label people want. I am not marginalized. I will not accept a label that says I cannot be the best thing in the world. I just
right.
won't accept it. But it's always a label people want to put on us that says we're less than. And
It's
I just won't accept it. I'm not knocking whoever believes they're marginalized. I'm not
well,
knocking it, but
I've
I'm
said
not marginal.
I've said it before on this show, and I'll say it again. I don't believe that anybody should be marginalizing us, including us. I think
Right.
sometimes we marginalize ourselves. We
Right.
put certain boundaries on ourselves.
Right.
That's
We put limits on ourselves. That was something we can't do.
don't like
Now,
that.
Katie, you said you love math and numbers, and my daughter loves numbers. She took calculus. She aced calculus. She took it 3 times. She loved it so much. She took it. She took it in 11th grade, 12th grade, and freshman in college. She loved it so much, and she's an accountant. She loves numbers, and a lot of times people will say it's uncommon, but it's just if you are good at something and then you get the encouragement, you get the support. You know, you don't get the rejection or somebody telling you, well, maybe you should look for something different because people like you don't succeed. That's nuts. So I never listen to naysayers if they try to whisper in my ear. I reject all negativity. I can't live my life with not everything that I do is an A like A, but I put forth an A effort.
Right.
And I get really close. If I don't make it all the way, I get really close. So,
Well, you have to fight for what you know to.
oh, you muted yourself. You
Sorry.
muted.
You
Okay.
have to fight for what you know to be true. With that person that said that to me, we did talk, and she apologized. She thought that I was a white woman sneaking into a diversity contest, and we talked about why she thought that. And one of the things was she said that she saw my name was Katie, and she assumed that I wasn't black, and I was just
Golly.
you're gonna unpack why you think these things. And this is what I'm talking about with media. Like if we
Yes.
are in charge of telling our stories, we're gonna get the gaze of people who don't really know who we are. And we are like again, we're not in a box.
No.
My just because I'm black doesn't mean I'm just like you. I have different things that I like.
Mhm.
Um, and we do have a culture, but we are not limited to that. We are, the sky is the limit. I have one son who loves to learn languages. He's taught himself Japanese. He's learning Russian, French, Spanish, all like he just studies languages. Um,
Well, good for him.
I have one child who can play like 7 instruments.
Wow.
Um, we are just different. And we need people who are making decisions, publishing our stories, if we're gonna or doing it ourselves, that
Right.
understand that it's ridiculous. And we talked about it. She did apologize, and I just said that hopefully this is a lesson that the next time you are in a position of making decisions for someone else, that you think about your bias before you say something like that, or you basically blocked my opportunity just because you didn't take 2 seconds to go to my profile, or you thought that I should write a certain way because of who I am, when in reality, I just like writing comedy. So you're
She let
not
her assumptions affect what could have been your future.
exactly,
It's based on her assumption.
exactly. And I'm not going to even villainize her. I said that this is something that you now have learned, and I hope that this is a lesson that will open doors for whoever comes behind me. I mean, you can't work with me now, but for the next person, you won't do that. And it's also a lesson for me. So when I acquire manuscripts to publish, I want to know what is the reason you are publishing this book. What is your why? Because I care about that. I care about why you're telling the story, you know, and how it's going to connect to the reader.
Yeah, unfortunately, the gatekeepers in the publishing world, they're very myopic. They have extreme biases.
Yeah.
And they just, unless they've seen it before, they don't have any vision either. So it's everything has to be like what's already been done until somebody shows that they can do something different. Then they jump on that. So historical fiction that featured Black people was very limited for a long time. A lot of it centered around slavery, which I like. I like historical fiction in that period. But a lot of the historical fiction that's coming out now is well beyond that. It's more in the 100 years between. Like the guest we had on earlier in the show, it's the 100 years between emancipation and civil rights. Because that period, really, that 100 years really hasn't been covered very well in fiction, and now it is, which is really very welcome in the industry.
I love to see what our contributions are. I love that we get to touch on that. So many of our contributions were hidden, and we don't even know what we've done to contribute to the growth. Well, we know about slavery, but beyond that, the inventions and the big and even small things that we've done to contribute to the growth of this nation and the important role that we play as citizens. So I think that again, those stories are important. But the fact remains that 85% of our youth do not read at grade level. And that's a problem because what are we putting in front of them that they're not wanting to read? It's not about the capability, it's about the desire. I wouldn't want to read, there's a disconnect and I think it's up to us who publish books and write books that we work hand in hand with those who are trying to make a difference to raise those literacy rates because obviously if we can't read,
Right.
it's a
The
detriment.
reading is the foundation for everything,
Exactly.
even math, because you
Math.
can't do a word problem if you can't read. You can't do a math word problem if you can't read.
Yeah, I think it also goes back to what we were talking about with assumptions. When we expect more from our kids, they usually live up to that. But if we
Yes.
assume that they can't do it and we kind of dumb down the curriculum because we think that's what's going to be on their level, they'll live up to that. So we just have to keep expecting the best or expecting the best and the most from our kids.
Exactly. We are excellent and we have excellence in us. And as a teacher, I expected that from my students. Um, and if they came to me and, if they were hungry, hey, here's a snack. But we're doing algebra today. And we're gonna work through this because this is what your education is your ticket. It's your ticket.
Yeah, it's really your ticket to life, really,
Yes, gotta have it.
the rest of your life.
Well,
So
Katie,
what grade level did you teach at?
6 through 9. 6 through 9.
Okay.
And then I left teaching. It was a hard decision. And I went into government work. And then now I'm just a full-time writer.
Oh, you're a full-time writer. Well, congratulations on that.
Thank you. Thank you.
well, Katie, unfortunately, we've reached the end of the interview. We actually were able to interview a little while longer since we were able to bring you on a little bit longer. So that's always cool.
Thank
But if you can just remind us how we can reach out to you, remind us about the current book and the book that's coming out in May.
Yes. You can reach me. I have a author website, Katie Otey Writes, KatieOteyWrites.com. My book that's coming out in May is called Izzy's Almost Epic Day. And if you want to follow me as a publisher, it's PhoenixMediaandBooks.com.
Phoenix Media and Books. Did you give us that one so I can put that in the chat real quick?
I may not have, but you know what? It's on my Katie Otey Writes website.
Okay,
it's
so
all
we got that one on there. Well, thank you so much, Katie, for joining us tonight. Congratulations on your success. Oh, okay. Since you just gave it in the chat, I will put it into the Facebook chat.
Thank you.
But yeah, congratulations on your success, and best wishes to you in your future endeavors.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a great night.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, well, we have reached the end of our show, and this is the last show for Black History Month. I hope you all have been supporting African American literature and reading about our history, but don't limit it to only February. Make it a 365-day project. So that's it for us for tonight. I'm Gwen Richardson signing off, and we'll see you next Tuesday.
And I'm Dr. Rhonda Lawson. Have a wonderful evening and a great week.
Thank you for tuning in, and join us next Tuesday at 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern for another edition of Black Authors Matter TV.